Okay, it looks like all the panelists are here. So we can get started. Just want to try to see if I can look at. So make sure. Leon, I see you. Okay. Is Joshua here?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And Lauren?
Yep,
Macy, you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great.
Okay, I see David from the administration. Good morning. Superintendent Hassan, are you here? Yes, I see you. Sarah and Stephanie, are you guys joining as well? Sorry, I can't see everyone at once because I have half screen.
Yeah, Stephanie Costalibo, our Chief Data Officer, and Sarah Figueroa, my Chief of Staff, are joining us as well.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, David.
We also do have Courtney Moores as an attendee if we're able to shift her to a panelist. She's from our data and analytics team.
Oh, wonderful. Shane, let's let Courtney in.
Perfect.
Thank you,
so
Sarah.
much.
And Leon, am I missing anyone from your team? Joshua, were you having another person join?
Yeah.
Yes, we have Matan Kohler-Berkowitz, who is.
Okay, is Matan here?
I am here, yes.
Oh, perfect. Wonderful. Shane, Kerry, you guys ready to go?
I have Frank Alexopoulos.
Yep, Madam Chair, we're ready to go when you are.
Okay, sorry, Superintendent, I cut you off. You have who?
Frank Alexopoulos.
Okay.
He's brought over.
Okay. Thank you, Shane. Okay, let me get my and I have council colleagues. All right, wonderful. We can get started. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Kerry. For the record, my name is Andrea Campbell. I am the Boston City Councilor for District 4. I am also the chair of the Boston City Council Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice. We are joined, let me just make sure I get this accurate. I have my lovely notes so I don't miss any council colleagues. We're joined by Councilors Flaherty, Bach, Nisa Sabi-George, Councilor Mejia, and Councilor Flynn. Good morning. Thank you guys for being here. This is a public hearing. It's being recorded and live streamed at boston.gov/citycounciltv. It will rebroadcast on Xfinity Channel 8, RCN Channel 82, Verizon Fios Channel 1964. We will take public testimony at the end of this hearing. So if you wish to testify, please email shane.pac@boston.gov to sign up. We ask that when you do testify that you state your name and your affiliation and limit your comments to no more than 2 minutes. You can also submit written testimony at ccc.ps@boston.gov. Today's hearing is on docket number 0417. It's an order for a hearing regarding inaccuracies in Analyze Boston's crime incident report data sets. I first want to start by thanking all of my panelists for being here this morning. I appreciate the time that you guys are taking out of your busy schedule to be here. Hold on one second, I've lost some notes here. Hold on one second. I'm on Wi-Fi in City Hall, and so my screen keeps pausing and going. We're working on upgrades. I first want to thank Citizens for Juvenile Justice for identifying these issues and bringing them to my attention and for this hearing today. I also want to thank the ACLU for your work on these issues. And of course, I want to thank our panelists from the police department as well as Do It for being here today. We have been saying, I feel like in the last 48 hours, that transparency is key. And there's no way that I can begin this hearing without acknowledging the many devastating examples of why people, not just here in Boston, but across this country, want and deserve the greatest level of transparency and accountability from their police departments. Whether, of course, it's the unconscionable report that for more than 20 years, the police department allegedly protected an officer who's accused of child molestation, the ongoing Chauvin trial, and the latest horrific police violence against unarmed Black men, most recently with Dante Wright in Minneapolis, all are part of a long line of unchecked police power used against its citizens. And as one of my young Black team members remarked just yesterday, that all of us, especially those in communities of color, are tired of it. Transparency plays a critical role in ensuring accountability, and that we all have the data and information to honestly assess the scope of the problems and thus meaningfully respond with impactful solutions. As I continue, of course, to push our police department to be proactive in releasing data and information as a way to demonstrate its value of transparency, and not merely in investigations, but also with data around traffic stops, stop and frisk data, our budget numbers, our diversity demographics, and other pertinent and important information. This hearing is an opportunity for us to discuss one part of that. In this hearing, we will analyze and review the Analyze Boston's public data set, which is the Boston Police Department's crime incident reports. Again, I want to thank CFJJ again for giving us frankly giving us the information we would need to host this hearing. I'm going to turn it over to them to actually begin the conversation to specifically speak to the inaccuracies and the challenges with the data. Then I will turn it over to ACLU for a presentation, and then the administration for their presentation, as well as an opportunity for them to respond, but hopefully turn it into a conversation. I appreciate everyone being here today. Before I do that, I quickly want to go around to my council colleagues really briefly if they have some opening remarks. Briefly, I'll start with, let's see, Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for hosting and sponsoring. Just looking forward to hearing from the panelists today. Obviously, information needs to be accurate because we measure it, and as a council, we make decisions with respect to funding. And it's important that we're giving our police department and other public safety agencies the resources that they need to do the job. Keeping our city safe and solving crime and violence is a big piece of why Boston is such an attractive place to live and work and raise a family. It's why companies are moving here to tap into our intellectual capital. So it's very important that we keep Boston safe. So this data, this information has to be accurate for us, particularly as elected leaders that are making decisions around budgeting. So look forward to the panelists and would love to hear the accurate facts so that we can make decisions based on that. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Bach.
Thank you, Councilor Campbell. I take your brevity instruction to heart and just say, I think this is the kind of oversight, accountability, transparency that we on the council are tasked with doing. And I'm grateful to the departments for being here, and hope that we can come out the other side with more reliable data for everybody who's trying to think about how we have a better, safer, more accountable city for all. So thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Sabi George.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for hosting today's hearing. Again, look forward to hearing from both the advocates and the department around the work and the assignment that's before us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Mejia.
Hi, yes, good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, for hosting this. I do think that in the same spirit in which Councilor Flaherty talked about the accuracy of data, for the same reasons, that's why a lot of Black and brown people are moving out of the city of Boston. They don't feel safe, they don't feel protected. So I think that this conversation is going to help us understand where things lie, and in terms of funding and supporting, I think that I see this as also an opportunity to talk about a lot of the unsolved murders that are happening across the city of Boston. In terms of data collection, I'm just really curious about all of that. So looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for hosting, and thank you for the administration for showing up. That's very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Flynn.
Thank you, Councilor Campbell, for your leadership on this important issue. Thank you to the city administration, the Boston police team for being here. as well as the advocates, had the opportunity as a probation officer for 10 years to study crime stats of people leaving jail or prison. So I know having accurate data is critical. It will also help the Boston Police Department in their job as well. Again, want to say thank you to the Boston Police also for their professionalism during this very difficult time. Thank you, Councilor Campbell.
Thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Leon from CFJJ.
Thank you so much, Chair Campbell. First and foremost, I want to thank you, Vice Chair Flaherty, and the other members of the committee, just for the opportunity to appear before you this morning and to testify on these important issues. I also want to just uplift your comment, Chair Campbell, earlier. The tragic incidents that are currently unfolding in Minneapolis is a stark reminder to us all that the work of police accountability is very much an ongoing one, and conversations like the one that we're having this morning are so essential and crucial to that. Again, my name is Leon Smith, and I'm the Executive Director at Citizens for Juvenile Justice. I am here with my colleagues, Josh Dankoff, who's our Director of Strategic Initiatives, and Matan Kohler-Berkowitz, who is one of our interns. CFJJ is the only independent nonprofit statewide organization working exclusively to improve the juvenile justice system and other youth serving systems in Massachusetts. For the past 16 years, we've been a steadfast voice advocating for greater data transparency in Massachusetts, as our core belief as an organization is that sound policy must be based on comprehensive, uniform, reliable, and publicly accessible data. And it's in that spirit, the spirit of that advocacy, that we welcome the Boston Police Department's public-facing crime incident reports database. And we commend the citywide analytics team for taking this bold step towards increased data transparency in the city of Boston. But, you know, as we're in this moment where citizens and communities are demanding more accountability from law enforcement, and they're asking tough questions about the role that police officers play in our communities, this kind of data, it's really crucial to inform those conversations. So we were so excited when we saw this database, but we did notice a number of issues regarding the quality of the data within the database. And the reason we're here today is to encourage the step towards transparency, but also to illuminate the issues that we did find so that they can be corrected to ensure that the public has the most reliable information and really an accurate picture of police responses to incidents in the city. Now I will cede the remainder of my time to Josh and to Matan, who will walk through not only some of the issues that we found, but some proposed solutions as well. Josh?
Thanks, Leon, and thank you, Chair Campbell and the other council members. My name is Josh Dankoff. I'm Director of Strategic Initiatives at Citizens for Juvenile Justice. I'm just going to say a couple words and then pass this over to Matan, who, though his title is intern, he's really the one who helped identify these issues. And so I'm going to really let him speak. So just to restate, as Leon said, we love public-facing databases. And the city of Boston should really be commended. We've done a lot of public records requests around the state, and it's a pleasure to be able to just go to the website and access data that's public facing for things that are really meaningful. The crime incident report database is provided by the police department, and contains initial details on a whole range of issues that police officers are responding to, both core public safety functions and outside of that. And this data really allows the city and the police department itself and the public and advocacy organizations to do a range of things. So I just want to mention a couple of things that CFJJ has used this data with, just to sort of set up the importance of having accurate data, and then I'll let Matan talk about that. So CFJJ has looked at a broad level around different categories of incidents that are being responded to understand frequency and trends over years. We appreciate that there are at least 4 or 5 years of data, but as you'll see in the chart that's on the screen, that stops right now at 2019. although there is some data available for 2020, the challenges in the data that are going to be outlined meant that we couldn't actually continue our analysis to understand what was going on for 2020. The data also provides location, so we can do mapping as just one example of the traffic stops done here, and understand, what are the things really that our police force is spending its time doing. So, as I said, Matan is the one who came up, brought these issues to us, and led us to bring these issues to you. We're thrilled to have the opportunity to present. So I'm going to pass over to Matan.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you once again for this opportunity. As we mentioned, there were two main issues with the incident report data set. First, that the data itself is duplicated, and second, that the categorization of the incidents has been changed, which makes it harder for the public to understand the types of incidents that police are responding to. We first noticed the data duplication issues in early January of this year, when we saw that 2020 and 2019 had significantly more incidents than previous years. Specifically, 2020 had around 2.1 million incidents that year compared to approximately 100,000 in previous years. We then found that in 2020 and in late 2019, each incident was actually duplicated between 20 and 30 times, with each incident being exactly identical to the original incident. As you can see in the screenshot currently on screen, the table for the 2020 incident reports has the same exact incident being listed again and again and again. Once we downloaded the data set and then removed the duplicates, we found there were only 29,000 unique incidents, which is again far fewer than usual this time, which is still a strange number. Later that year in February, we checked the data set again, and we saw that there were more overall incidents in 2020 and 2019 than what there were in January. In this case, there was 2.5, as you can see on the screenshot here, 2.5 million incidents in 2020, meaning the total overall number of incidents had risen after 2020 had already ended. In addition, after downloading the data set, we found that there were 90,000 unique incidents after removing duplicates in 2020. This number is actually very reasonable. However, given the previous fluctuations in the data set and the still existing duplication issues, this number and the 2020 data set overall is fairly unreliable. After bringing this issue to Councillor Campbell's attention, the citywide analytics team pulled down the data set pending review. It is still offline as of this morning, but we do commend the citywide analytics team for promptly investigating this issue. The second issue we'd like to discuss today is the changing of categorization. In September of 2019, the BPD changed, removed, and consolidated a substantial number of incident descriptions. In the dataset, each incident has a specific description, such as towed motor vehicle, or sick assist, or auto theft. What the change did was it took multiple unique descriptions and consolidated them into one more general description. This has the effect of obscuring police activity and making it harder for the public to actually understand what kind of incidents police are responding to. For example, before the changes were made, there used to be three categories for commercial burglaries: attempted, with force, and without force. Now, however, there's only one overarching description, which encompasses all commercial burglary attempts, or all commercial burglary incidents. Similarly, there used to be different weapon incidents, which is broken down by the type of weapon, firearm or other, and the offense, carrying, trafficking, or other. And now, once again, all the weapon incidents are all funneled under a single weapon. And finally, and most egregiously, 22 different types of drug incidents, which were previously broken down both by class of drug and by the type of offense. So for instance, as you can see on the screen, there was drugs class A trafficking over 18 grams, drugs possession class B, and a lot more. Now, however, they've all been consolidated into a single incident called drugs possession/sale/manufacturing/use. From a public policy perspective, there is a significant difference, for instance, in the police finding someone with a small amount of marijuana over the legal limit and discovering a heroin trafficking operation. Before these changes were made, the public could differentiate between these two different types of offenses and understand how police resources are being used to fight drug use. However, after these changes were made, both of those types of offenses and all the rest of drug offenses are all grouped under a single type of incident, which obscures the type of drug incidents that police are responding to. And it makes it harder for the public, including organizations like CFJJ, to have informed public policy discussions about the role of police in combating drug use. And the other changes that were made, as you can see on screen, made it similarly more difficult to have the same kind of public policy discussions in other areas. In total, 59 different incident descriptions were consolidated down into just 14. Given these issues, we recommend that the citywide analytics team and Boston Police continue to work to resolve the duplication issues and restore the data sets back online. We also recommend that the BPD provide a clear reason for changing their categorization, and we strongly recommend that, if possible, the BPD revert back to the more detailed incident classification system. Thank you so much for your time and your attention to this issue, and for recognizing the importance of public and accurate data to inform policy. We look forward to any questions from the committee.
Thank you, guys. I'm going to move on to Lauren. Are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Perfect. For a quick presentation, and then I'm going to go on to the administration, and then I'll open it up to questions from the council.
Great. Okay, let me get my slide deck up now. Can everyone see this? Looks okay?
Yes.
Great. So thank you so much, Chair Campbell, for the invitation to be here today. My name is Lauren Chambers. I am the staff technologist at the ACLU of Massachusetts. And I want to start out also by thanking the leaders at Citizens for Juvenile Justice, or CFJJ, for bringing this issue to the fore and inviting us to contribute as well. So like CFJJ, we're here today to share evidence of the concerning inconsistencies and changes that we have also seen in the Analyze Boston police incident data set. We're going to be hitting on some of the same points, so we won't be presenting anything that the amazing Matan didn't just share, but we're hoping that our insights will kind of present an additional perspective on the data and how we're using it, and also just emphasize the impact of these problems that CFJJ just laid out, and further can demonstrate the fact that these issues have been going on for at the very least 1 year, so they're not new or unknown problems. So diving right in, over a year ago in March 2020, the ACLU of Massachusetts created a public dashboard to help advocates and citizens visualize and explore Boston Police Department incident data using exactly this database on the Analyze Boston site. Unfortunately, while designing that dashboard, we quickly realized that the incidents documented in the database on Analyze Boston were changing from day to day. So as you can see in this chart here, starting in March 2020, we were running queries. So basically going to the website and pulling down the data that was available on that website every single day. And we were pulling down at least 8 months worth of data. But we found that the 8 months of data we were getting were changing from day to day. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we were getting different things for the past 8 months. So what this plot is showing is that you can see for, say, a particular day in December of 2019, if you did a query on Monday, March 16th, you would see that around 200 incidents that day were missing location data. But just a couple weeks later, on March 30th, almost none of them were missing location data. So all of them had location data. And then a couple days later, on April 2nd, if you went back, then you had somewhere around 50 of these incidents that were missing location data. So what this suggests is that all of the incidents in the database had location data, but you could only sometimes find that location data on the website, which was confusing. So unfortunately, because of this issue and some of the already detailed issues that CFJJ was talking about the duplication of incidents, the ACLU ended up resorting to building and maintaining our own data pipeline and database that is kind of a copy of the version on Analyze Boston, where we're trying to get rid of those duplications and maintain, if location data pops up, you keep it for that incident, and that means that if it disappears a week down the line, we still have access to it. So that was a tedious process for us, but it was more than worth it in the end, because it's so important to have data like this to inform the sorts of people who are seeking to understand policing in Boston. But of course, nonprofits, civic organizations, and citizens shouldn't have to depend on expertise in database design and maintenance to be able to interpret publicly available policing data. And then the second concern that I want to raise, again, as Matan already did, was really the drastic effects of this transition to a new record management system. So as he said, in fall 2019, BPD transitioned to a new system called Mark 43, which is a public safety software startup that drastically decreased the quality of the data that they were sharing around policing incidents. So as he was saying, you took a whole bunch of really detailed category descriptions and squished them all down into a whole bunch of overly broad category descriptions. So what this chart we're looking at currently is showing is that previously various drug-related incidents were categorized in over a dozen different categories based on the type and the amount of drug and the type of kind of interaction with the drug that was happening. And they all got changed into this one overly broad category: drugs, possession / sale / manufacturing / use. And as Matan laid out, this also happened with other important categories, including weapons, assault and battery, breaking and entering, and others. So it's unclear to us why BPD made the switch, or if any consideration was given as to how that would affect analytics around these sorts of incidents. But of course, researchers, activists, and journalists, and everyone needs more detailed data in order to understand how policing in Boston actually impacts individuals and communities. So for example, it should be possible for the department and the public to easily see how many people have been have had interactions with the police around heroin possession over a given period of time, as well as the locations of those interactions and basic demographic information like race and gender and age of the people having these police interactions. But frustratingly, the current incident data doesn't allow for that level of analysis. And kind of to the point that it's not offering the public much in the way of transparency at all, and isn't particularly helpful for any meaningful analysis around the state of policing in Boston at the moment, which is a real shame because Boston's open data portal is one of the best in the country. With it, we're really setting a strong example for other cities, both in the sorts of data that are available there and the ease of access. As we love to say at the ACLU, you can't manage what you don't measure. But unfortunately, the mismanagement of this particular policing incident data set has knocked out one of the few publicly available avenues for holding the Boston Police Department accountable and providing transparency into kind of the inner ongoings of where policing is happening and how policing is happening and what communities are being affected. So with that, I will close and kind of +1 all of the recommendations that CFJJ proposed around investigating more around why these database issues are happening, and encouraging them to potentially consider adopting a new record management system that reestablishes this granularity of detail around what's happening with policing. So I'll just say thanks so much to CFJJ and Councillor Campbell for bringing this attention to the issue, and we're hoping that it can be discussed today and hopefully resolved in the near future. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Lauren. I'm going to now turn it over. I wasn't sure if DeWitt wanted to go first or if the department, BPD, wanted to go first, Superintendent. I defer to you guys.
So, Council, we can go first. Since,
okay, thank you.
Yeah, so first of all, we want to, we echo some of the same sentiments that were expressed here this morning. So, we're really not that far from, we're all on the same team. So this was brought to our attention, and and we're happy that it was, because this issue isn't just related to Analyze Boston. When we brought in Mark 43 in September 2019, we had several of our other connected databases and systems, had issues. Like, for instance, our evidence tracking that had to be revamped. Our booking system, we're having a similar problem with the public journals and case management. There were several things that needed to be upgraded because of this new record management system. So simultaneous to this but independent of us bringing this new record management system in, was the federal government mandated that we change from the UCR to the NIBIS system. So it kind of really clouds both issues, because when both of those came online, it kind of overlapped, creating issues independent but connected. So with that, so we, again, this was brought to our attention. We got together with Do It and the ISG team here in the police department, and we kind of took apart what was going on, and they were, we actually hired the consultant Mark 43. We brought them on board, and they with all the hard work would Do It and Mark 43, and my ISG team, we think we're about ready to relaunch, or have this reapplied to the city Boston Analyze. So, but that's the good news is working with Mark 43, and I know we want to be as transparent as we can be, and they've proposed, they have a new public-facing website that I think will be ready within a year, 6 months to a year. And I can't speak for Analyze Boston, but I think the Boston Police Department, we're going to adopt it and have that available for our citizens. And it's going to have all this information that, both Matan and the ACL were looking for. And they're going to be able to map it and pull out whatever they need. It's going to be a great thing. Like I said, it's about 6 months to a year away. But we've had several negotiations. We're going to bring that on board. All these things take time. So with that, so I know the second issue, so that was the first issue. So that is in the pipeline. We're going to get rid of all those duplications. What happened was a technical glitch that every day we submitted it, it started counting itself. So on day one, you had one incident. Day two, you had that one incident counted twice, basically, and it just kept going on and on because, again, we have so many other systems that we're trying to fix. We're trying to make everything coordinated. So, but with the second issue, the categorization change that Matan brought up. So with this new record management system, you have a generalized crime. So because we had to go from UCR to NIBIS. So within NIBIS, it has every crime is really dissected. If one person is charged with a crime, every crime would be listed on the report. So you'd collect the first box, say it would be drugs. And then it would be a drop-down category, and then you select each one. So the federal government can get a handle of what's going on. So what happened was between that system and Analyze Boston, it just picked up the generalized code that's selected off the first box. So that's how everything. I was talking to my people here, Frank, whatever. We think that we could probably work it out. It's going to take a long time to get each one, and it might even cause more duplication because you're going to have to, one person will have 5 crimes associated with one incident. So we don't know how that's going to work out, but I really think that what the benefit is you identify the problem, we're within days of rectifying it, and in the future, that we're going to be engaging in with the new public-facing website, I think will make people more than happy with the information they'll be able to get off that incident. So that's basically it. Again, we're nothing nefarious going on here. It's just the system changed, and we're trying to catch up with everything else that is tied to that change and fixing them as they're brought to our attention. And that's it. If Dula wants to weigh in, I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Superintendent. I'll have David and Sarah and the team also provide remarks.
Good morning, Madam Chair. And just to echo what the superintendent was speaking of, when this was brought to our attention, quickly circled back with the police and in our, as you know, as the superintendent said, really just kind of in days of having this problem remediated. And one of the things I want to highlight, and I'll pass it over to our Chief Data Officer, Stephanie Costalibo, to add more context and a little more detail, is this what they call pipeline into this data set was really set up quite some time ago, at the same time that we were standing up Analyze Boston, and really at the same time we were standing up the data and analytics team. And as we look at that process, if we would have stood this solution up today, that process has been refined and that would have been caught as we look at the quality of data and deduplicating the data and making sure that as we post this data, understanding that transparency and accountability are of the utmost importance, this would have been caught by today's process standards. But because it was an older process, it did not get caught. We are applying our new process and our new standards to our older data sets, but it is slow going. There's a lot of legacy data sets to go through and a lot of pipelines to look at pulling that data in, and it's just slow going. We were made aware of this. We immediately circled the troops together in our days away from remediation. And after that, we should be in a good place. And I will yield the rest of this over to Stephanie Costalibo, our Chief Data Officer, to add some more context and some more details.
Thank you, David.
Oh, thank you, David. Thank you, Madam Chair. Apologies, my internet connection is not fully stable with my video on, so if it's okay, I'll keep that off. So yes, as David mentioned, this particular pipeline is one of several that were set up before the analytics team was even formally created back in 2015. And the analytics team has come a really long way in terms of how we are establishing and maintaining and continuing to review the new pipelines that we have put in place since then. We've spent many years setting up a centralized data warehouse and putting together best practices and standards for how we develop these pipelines going forward. That now includes data unit testing, so that we have automated processes in place that will alert us if the data that comes into our data warehouse is not what we expect. So just to give an example of what that might mean. So take 311 requests. We could put data unit testing in place that would alert us if there were no new cases reported from the previous day. That would be something we would expect to see, right? And so we can sort of customize and develop these unit tests for each individual data source based on the underlying business processes and what we expect that data to do, so that when it does something unexpected, in the case of the data we're talking about here, the presence of duplicate records, it would flag that for our engineering team, and we would sort of be proactively notified when that happens and could start doing the troubleshooting and triage needed to remediate that issue. And as David mentioned, it's just, there's a lot out there. So there's over 250 data sets on Analyze Boston alone that are publicly available. But that's in addition to, to other internal data sources that are being used to support internal reporting throughout the organization as well. And so with the number of folks on our team, we're in a good place in terms of the new pipelines that have been developed in the last couple of years and those that we're developing going forward. But it does take time to retroactively go back to some of those legacy workflows to get them up to the standards that we're putting in place today. So it's something that's on our roadmap. You know, when issues do arise and we're alerted to those become priorities for us to resolve. But it will take us some time to be able to apply all of the standards that we have for current work to, you know, to the legacy pipelines that were established 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Thank you, Stephanie. Does anyone else from your team want to testify before I sort of open it up for questions? All set, David? Yes, okay. I'll ask a couple of questions and then I'll go to council colleagues. So it sounds like there's a commitment from the administration, one, to obviously remove the duplicates, and then also to go back to the more detailed characterizations of the offenses. So to pull those broad categories apart and go back to how they were originally categorized. Is that correct?
That, Council, that may be a problem in a significant undertaking, but we're certainly willing to, at this point, do, you know, whatever, again, we'll work with the team. But I think if we showed David and his team what Mark 43, you know, I know it's 6 months away, but I don't know if we could get, you know, pulling apart those categories done any quicker, but I think David may want to weigh in on that.
And that was going to be my other question. It sounds like there's a willingness to do it, but what I guess drives how long it takes? Clearly it was done before, right? These categories. So just what drives how long it takes? Not the removal of the duplicates, but the reverting back to the more detailed categorization.
I'd have to ask Frank for his opinion, because, you know, working with like some things seem like a simple fix, and I would like them done in 3 days, and I'm told, no, 3 months. So Frank, could you weigh in and give your opinion on what something like this, how was the length of time if we got Mark 43 involved in this? Frank Alexopoulos.
Yeah, I have to help about that, so I can talk when you want it.
Hi, Frank.
Hi, how are you?
Good. We can hear you.
Hear me?
Yes.
Just to answer the super's question, I'd have to reach out to Mark 43 so I can obtain some answers to that question, so I can inform him properly.
Okay. That would, go ahead.
It's going to involve a scope of work, and I want to make sure that we know what that scope of work is before we do it.
Okay, that would be helpful, because I think that's the biggest thing, is not just, of course, removing duplicates, going back to the more detailed characterizations, but just how long it will take to get this information back out public facing. So any follow-up on that would be extremely helpful. Sure. And then my last question before I turn it over to council colleagues is, who decides, or who decides what information will be released from the police department? Who decides what's going to be in the data set, what's not going to be in the data set? What's that decision-making process?
We release everything except for what we can't by statute, which would be any sexual assault, domestic violence, or juvenile arrests. So, and that's part of the parameters that we're trying to set up with. That's what's taking so long with fixing this issue.
But in terms of the who, so is it you, superintendent? Is there a group of folks in the department that decide what information should be released? Is it just the legal department? Who's sort of in the room?
Yeah, the legal department. We just basically release, again, everything that we can under the law, and then we tell Matt and his team, Frank and his team, what, what we can release, and they set the, technical parameters, and that's what it is.
Thank you.
Go
ahead.
Just by state law, Counselor, that's it. We're just following the law, trying to.
No, understood. I know there are parameters in place. I'm just always curious sort of who's the decision maker in the department or who's involved. So that's helpful. I'm going to be mindful of time. I'm going to go to Councilor Flaherty. I'm timing us all. So Councilor Flaherty, you're about 5 minutes. I don't know if we've lost him. Councilor Bach. Councilor Asabi George. Councilor Flynn.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Campbell. Again, thank you to the advocates and the administration team.
How rude of me. I skipped Councilor Mejia. I literally looked at my report just now. I'm so sorry, Councilor Flynn. You're next,
okay.
Councilor Mejia.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I'm surprised you didn't say anything. I'm looking at my list. I'm like, uh-oh. Go ahead, Councilor Mejia.
This is a common.
You're up next.
I know this is a common theme, and a lot of folks always forget about me. I don't know how I'm hard to forget.
Not me.
So
That's not my way. Not my way. Councilor Mejia, then Councilor Flynn.
Yeah, so I'm just curious this is more a question for the advocate. I'm curious to Lauren's point, we shouldn't have to depend on the expertise of a database design experts to understand trends in crime reports. And beyond making this data more accurate, I'm just curious of like, how can we make it more understandable and accessible for the people? I think that one thing is to have information, the other is to disseminate it in a way that we can understand. Actually do something with it. So I'm just curious, what, if anything, we've seen across the country and in other spaces that make data easy for people to understand. Because I know that for us, even just regular, common folks, it's hard to understand half the language that we use in certain spaces, and even understanding even graphs are complicated. So love to hear some best practices and like how we can disseminate data in ways that everyone can understand.
Council, I agree with you.
I don't know how to do that.
Technical, you can't, you really have to know what you're looking at, how to discern it and analyze it. It's very difficult, again, not to keep pointed to this new thing that we're looking at with Mark 43. It has a lot of visualizations, mapping. You can pull up reports, time, date, location. Will be a very interactive system. So we're looking forward to bringing this on. But I agree with you. To understand what all that is posted on Analyze Boston, the average person wouldn't really know what they're looking at.
Yeah, so then to that point, I'm just thinking, Councilor Campbell, as we start thinking about what this data collection and dissemination process looks like, I would recommend that we have even an advisory group of folks, right, to kind of help inform what information we could be, in addition, what can we be gathering, how it should be disseminated, so that we're bringing people to the table who are living these realities to inform what that dissemination would look like and what might be helpful to folks. I think I'm really big on making sure that those who are living the realities also understand the important role that they play in shaping whatever processes we put in place. So would love to encourage us to think about that. And then I also think in terms from an accountability standpoint, there are a lot of civic associations. I know that our officers, when there are meetings, neighborhood meetings, they come in and they share, here's the crime, here's everything, information happening there. We can also share out, the stop and frisk or some of that other, just talking about, would that be a venue for also talking about some of the the other stuff that we can share in public meetings and in spaces. And my internet is unstable, so I don't know if I'm even still here or if you got any other things.
No, we're hearing you, Council Mejia. I see that Leon and Joshua have their hand raised, so I want to give them an opportunity to reply to you.
So very quickly, I would add that as we think about ways in which we can connect this data with individuals in the community, in Boston, we have a very robust and thriving advocacy community of organizations who do engage in data analysts and do reach out to parent groups and groups of young people to share that data. So if there's a conversation or an advisory group, I know I can speak for CFJJ as well as for other organizations we work in coalition with who would be more than happy to be a part of that conversation. For example, CFJJ takes data from the Department of Education in their publicly facing website, and we put it in a form that's easily digestible for the community around school discipline issues. As we sharpen this Boston Police database, we'd love to be able to do something like that as well, and then work with counselors or others to find avenues to connect that to community folks to ensure that everyone really understands the interface with law enforcement in communities.
That's great. Thank you for that, Leon. I'm excited about the work that you're doing. I'm curious also to hear from the administration in terms of the work that they're doing, to hear from folks
Josh,
as well. So Josh, I know you have.
Yeah, I'm gonna have him respond and then the administration. Joshua, I saw your hand was up.
Thank you. Just briefly there, while I don't have an example at the municipal level, we do here in Massachusetts have quite a good example of a state agency providing public-facing analysis in the juvenile justice field. I'm referring to the Office of the Child Advocate and the Juvenile Justice Data and Policy Board. I don't think I can drop it into the chat, but their Juvenile Justice System Data and Outcomes for Youth website, which was just released in November of last year, pulls data, including arrest data, but across all system actors, and makes it public facing, along with analysis that and trend with easier to read than certainly just a bunch of data sets. So we do have an example there. And to say that that was created by legislation just in 2018, this is very new. So I just wanted to add that, and we would certainly appreciate analysis and trend data from the city themselves, and still see that there's a role for the advocacy community to add another layer of analysis as well.
Thank you. And then administration or superintendent, do you have a response, Council Mejia, particularly on the advisory piece? Sort of goes back to the decision-making question around, who's in the room, who's deciding what information is released, et cetera. Want to give you an opportunity to respond.
Again, Councilor, we just kind of follow, we put everything out that we can. The only things that we withhold are the things that we're prohibited by state law. So as far as advisory, in terms of which road we want to go down in the future, is that what Councilor Mejia is looking for, or participate in this developing what public facing responses that we have for her, or what? I'm not really sure what she wants to have an advisory group for.
Well, Councilor Mejia, you can add to that before I go to Councilor Flynn.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
so
broader. Go ahead, Councilor Mejia.
Okay. No. So what I'm curious about is just kind of the role that community is playing alongside the department to inform what information is being collected, whether or not to advise you on the dissemination of it. Like, are you all creating space for regular people to be in communication with you all around dissemination and collection? And also, what opportunities exist for the community officers that go to civic association meetings to also utilize that time to also share data that we're talking about here today as part of their report out in the civic association meetings?
Yes, Councilor. So, we do that. So we're going to look to this for a centralized location for this public facing bill. product that Mark 43 is going to develop. But we also, you know, I was a captain in 3 different districts, Roxbury, West Roxbury, downtown Boston, and that was part of, you know, each community meeting to present the issues at each meeting, what's going on in that particular neighborhood, and whatever concerns that the citizens had, they could bring it right to the district captain and the community service offices. They, you know, they have access to get that information, and they, speaking for myself, I always presented because I know that how important that it was and how much the community wanted it. So yes, there's a lot of personal interaction, and we're going to, plus on top of this, we're going to have the public facing journals. Anybody could come and, you know, review police reports right off our website. So, I mean, I think there's a lot that's being shared, everything we can, again, and we pursue every mechanism to share that information.
Thank you, Superintendent, and thank you, Councilor Mejia. I do think your point is a great one in that, you know, obviously you have CFJJ and other organizations. There are a whole host of organizations, ACLU, willing to analyze the data. So it's not just data sets, but it's turned in almost to a narrative that people can understand, the layperson can understand. And I do think with the respect to the report outs at the civic association meetings, it's one thing to read the incident reports. It's another thing to say in this area, domestic violence is going down, you know, property crime is going up. So some of these trends and analysis could be very useful. And I think the advisory board could be helpful to the department, not only in informing what could come out, but also in helping create a narrative around the data, particularly for residents who don't have time to do it. Councilor Flynn, thank you, Councilor Mejia. Councilor Flynn?
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Campbell. Again, thank you to you and to the advocates and the administration and the police. I guess my question would be to the superintendent, or my comment would be to the superintendent. I probably go to, you know, 3 or 4 community meetings a night on Zoom anyway. And the first person that speaks at the community meeting is usually the CSO from the Boston Police, and they give an update on, as what Councilor Campbell mentioned, the crime stats and what's happening in a particular neighborhood. And residents enjoy, get a lot out of that briefing. They want to know exactly what's happening. I think that's a critical part of community policing or interacting with the community is through the CSO office. I'm wondering, Superintendent, they play such a critical role in our city. Do we know, based on evidence or data, how effective they are in terms of working with residents on particular issues, or as compared to not having a CSO at a certain neighborhood? I know we have them in all neighborhoods, or CSOs that are more engaged or more active. But I'm just wanting to get kind of an overall of the CSO program, and I think it should be expanded, in my opinion. I think it's a critical part of the city, critical part of policing, but just wanted to get your thoughts, Superintendent.
Well, Council, we don't have any data on how effective, but we do know that they are very effective, particularly creating that relationship, sharing the information, also providing mechanism how to access solutions to those problems, whether, you know, crime tips or contacting other city agencies. We try to work in partnership with everybody so that, you know, the particular crime or that's happening in that neighborhood is, you know, resolved. Like you said, you can't fix a problem until you recognize it, and that's part of the whole process. So it's brought to the police department. Most of the community problems are brought through that mechanism and handled at the district level, because, you know, the CSOs know the people, they understand the people, And, you know, they empathize and want to help make the neighborhood safer. So they're very effective. So, I mean, but we do not have, you know, empirical data that says how effective they are. But I think there was a recent survey conducted by the city on how happy the citizens were with the Boston Police Department. I don't have the exact numbers, but very, very highly, very high on how happy they were. And I think that community service officers play a big role in those satisfaction numbers. So.
Thank you, Superintendent. And I guess for the activists, I just basically like to ask the same question. Can you talk about some of your experiences working with the CSO team? And I know this hearing is based on crime stats, but what impact, in your opinion, are we having through the CSOs interacting closely with residents, especially as they provide their crime stats and crime data at these neighborhood meetings?
I'm happy to just briefly say, from Citizens for Juvenile Justice, we have not, as an organization, used that as an opportunity for community engagement. We do convene a coalition statewide of organizations working in the juvenile justice space, more than 60 organizations, to help inform our, especially our advocacy agenda, that are, you know, much closer. But we take that point. I know as a Boston resident myself, I've certainly had the monthly meeting in my neighborhood on my calendar, and it's just right around my kid's bedtime. So I've not made it over the last year. But thank you for the reminder. I'm going to take that to heart on a personal and professional matter.
Also, that's a good point too. Like, so each district also has a juvenile officer that tries to understand what the issues that the juveniles in the district experiencing. So maybe they could have some type of partnership with, you know, get it firsthand on what's going on with kids in the neighborhood.
Yeah, thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Josh. It was Josh that provided the response as well, and just wanted to again highlight the critical role they play in our city. And as we have this divide between, unfortunately, the divide between the Boston police and the community, the CSOs can help us bridge that gap. They have credibility in the neighborhood. People respect them. They're interacting with kids at sports games, at basketball cookouts. Especially district councilors know the critical role CSOs play in our city, because we deal with them several times a week. So if I'm able to provide a little bit of recommendation, I would like all of us to interact and learn more about the CSO program. Thank you, Councilor Campbell, for letting me stay on for an extra minute. Thank you, Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. And I think it goes back to Councilor Mejia's point in the organizations that are assisting with this, turning the data, obviously CFJJ, ACLU, even what you were able to flag for us. We don't have the human capital on the council side and in our office to be able to analyze this data. But you guys in other organizations may play a critical role with our department, if our department sort of opens up, to be able to do some of that analysis for our CSO officers who are going out to community, to provide that narrative, because I often find it's not necessarily helpful to just run through all the incidents of crime that happen in the area. What are the trends, and then how might we respond with some policy changes to address it? So thank you, Councilor Flynn, and thank you, Councilor Mejia, for the ideas. I'm not going to just drag the hearing on. I know folks are very busy. Councilor Mejia, do you have any additional questions? I will make sure that everyone follow up. But go ahead, Councilor Mejia. I can hear you.
No, Councilor, I wasn't sure. I had a delay on my end, but
I can hear you now. At first there was a delay, so I didn't know if your internet was going out.
Yes, probably so. But no, I just wanted to, no, I don't have any further questions. I do think that as both the administration and our community groups are thinking about the level of engagement and the dissemination, I also just want to urge us to really make sure that we're thinking about different languages, right? Interpretation and translation are really key. And this is my broken record. I always talk about the fact that not everybody knows how to read and write, even in their native language. We know that the school to prison pipeline starts, as early as the 3rd grade. And a lot of our young people who are sitting in DYS right now have issues of illiteracy. And so I just think it's important for us to think about, even when we're thinking about dissemination, that we do not forget our privilege of being able to read and write, because a lot of the issues that we're talking about today impact some of our most vulnerable populations, many of which who don't know how to read or write. So the use of audio and visual clips are going to be really important as we disseminate this information. And so that's my broken record. That's all I talk about in every space that I'm in, is that I really want to make sure that we are super mindful of the fact that not everybody knows how to read and write. And so just really making sure that we communicate in ways that everybody can access the data. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Councilor Flynn, any final points? I'm going to go to before I go to public testimony.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Campbell. I have no further questions. Thank you, Councilor Campbell.
I'm now going to go to public testimony. I think we have, sounds like maybe one person signed up. Shane, if you want to let that person in, then I can see them.
Hi, Madam Chair. Looks like I'm still waiting for them to log on. She just emailed me about a few minutes ago.
Oh, okay. And then I guess anything final from any of the panelists? I will say, I will follow up with each of you after I hear back from Frank, who obviously has to do some internal conversations and talk to vendor on just the timeline to get this back online, to remove the duplicates, to go back to the detailed categorizations that existed previously. And I will also have continue the conversation that Councilor Mejia raised on an advisory group of some sort with the department. There's organizations obviously that are external that would be more than willing to help assist, it sounds like, in the development of analyzing this data, creating a narrative around the data so that people, the layperson in particular, can process it, digest it, so it makes sense. And of course, being very mindful, to Councilor Mejia's point, on how we disseminate that information in different languages and use different tools to be able to reach everyone, so they have a sense of what we're talking about. So we'll follow up on that point too. Lauren, I see your hand raised, so I'll go to you, Lauren, and then hopefully by that point, our public testimony person has signed on. Lauren, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to, again, express gratitude for the fact that this hearing happened at all today. I know I have learned a lot. I'm really grateful to those from the administration and from Do It for coming and sharing kind of updates. I just wanted to kind of flag that this moment seems like it's a perfect moment to be re-examining what exactly is happening with this database. So, if we're taking the time to potentially partner with Mark 43 and put out a new public sort of data visualization center, and it sounds like Do It is doing really great work around incorporating unit testing and all sorts of great kind of automated ways to improve the quality of the database. I just would flag that we should be using this moment also to think about not just restoring the database to where it was in the past, but how to make it even better. So for instance, there are certain things that aren't currently included and have never been included, namely the race and age and sex of the people that the police are interacting with, which of course is really key if we're trying to understand the potentially racially disparate impacts of policing in different locations across the city. So I would urge both the administration and Do It and Mark 43 and whoever kind of is pulling the puppet strings as we're reinstating this database to include new information, specifically race and those sorts of things. Additionally, Councillor Flynn raised the question of community support officers. Current database does not include information around the specific officers that are participating in the incidents. And so we don't have a way of being able to say this is the impact that any given officer is having on any given community. And so I would just flag that, you know, these moments of recreation and breakdown and improvement are exactly the moments where it's easiest to add new features. And there are some features like that that I know advocacy organizations would really love to see. So I'll just leave those as my 2 cents.
Very helpful, Lauren. Thank you so much. That's extremely helpful, particularly around the demographics, critically important. Thank you. I'll go to Joshua and then to Leon.
I second everything that Lauren said. First, a thank you for the hearing, and certainly to the administration and department for being here to discuss this openly, and the race, gender, et cetera. I would add one other point to that, there are a couple of databases that are public facing from the police. We've been discussing one of them, but there's also the FIOs, sometimes called stop and frisk in other jurisdictions. And as was mentioned, NIBRS, there's, you know, the NIBRS, the actual arrest data makes it out eventually. But right now, those are 3 separate things. It would be very powerful to understand which of these incidents we're talking about in this database arose from an FIO, and which of them led to an arrest, and which of them led to something else, right? Some level of being able to really understand not just these as separate things, but these are all things the police are doing, and you're collecting data on all of them. So what unified way? Now, there could be privacy concerns around that, and I just want to recognize that may be, you know, that should be considered in combining different types of data. But we've been thinking about this in somewhat siloed ways, because based on the data that's presented to us. But there is an opportunity, as Lauren was suggesting, to really think in a more integrated way to understand what is the role of the police on the ground and the impact of those, you know, and not to mention 911, right? What is the source of a call and an incident, and then what is the outcome? And again, we're just talking about police. We would love to see cooperation from Boston with other actors in the criminal justice system, including the county DA and the courts, and as was mentioned, you know, DYS and other state bodies for sort of deeper end criminal justice. So that would be my last thing. What an opportunity to build on the strong public facing work, and to build on the infrastructure and you know, smarts and commitment of data transparency. And let's not have these multiple databases leave us in a sort of data translucent space. Let's really have it be a data transparent space.
Thank you, very helpful. Leon, and then after you, I will go to public testimony.
And again, thank you all so much just for convening and having this important conversation this morning. Again, as well, just uplifting and affirming Lauren's point regarding age and race and ethnicity being included. As an organization that advocates for young people from birth to 25, obviously we would be interested in this information broken out by age. It's really important to understand neighborhoods and communities where young people are interacting at a high level with law enforcement. That sort of information would allow us to really take a close look to see, are those neighborhoods and community getting adequate supports and services for those young people? It would allow us to connect with the county district attorney's office and look at diversion and say, okay, we understand overall you're diverting a lot of cases, but is diversion being deployed equitably, particularly in neighborhoods and communities that have this high rate of interaction between young people and law enforcement? So by adding that layer, it enables us to really look deeper at, are we really providing the support and services in a developmentally appropriate way for our young people? The race and ethnicity, incredibly important. It honors the voices of communities within Boston that are really asking and demanding for that level of transparency, but also our recent policing legislation had a section 83, regarding bias-free policing. The way we know in which our police department is honoring the spirit of that law is eventually at some point having that data broken out by race. So again, adding those fields will really allow us not only just to see this information, but really ensure that our policies and practices are where they should be. And most importantly, that all citizens of Boston are really adequately supported and honored and served.
Thank you, Leon. I will now go to public testimony. If you want to unmute, say your name for the record. How are you? Say your name for the record.
Yes.
Your name for the record, organization, and then give about 2 or 3 minutes.
Yes. Good morning, Abigail Forrester here. I want to just say that this is a great hearing to, and recognize all the city councilors here that are really having this really important conversation about, how data is captured and so that we can make a difference in the community. I want to recognize my friend and close buddy, Leon Smith, and the work that CFJJ continues to do to really lift up data and the importance of data and understanding and analyzing how best our community is being served. But I just like to go back really quickly, Councillor Campbell, to Councillor Clarity's question about community policing and the CSOs, because I think that if young people were on this hearing, they would have a totally different response around the CSOs and the impact on the community, just in the sense that a lot of times the CSOs are the friendly officers, right? They are the officers that like the community already knows and that we're familiar with, but how those CSOs and that liaison of policing is making a difference in the community is really not as impactful as we would like it to be. Why? Because in most cases, we're not getting to the officers who are really causing the problems in our community. The detectives that we need to be in dialogues, that to meet with young people are not really out there meeting with our young people and engaging. And so we need to try to figure out a strategy on one, how we really get the officers who are not from the community in space with young people and community members to better improve the relationship between law enforcement and our community members, whether adult or young people. The other thing that I would say is that I'm a part of the Office of Public Safety's weekly Wednesday public safety meetings. And the interesting thing is that, for most of us, we get re-traumatized in the beginning of those meetings because we get downloaded a bunch of incident reports, right? How many guns, how many people got shot, all the stuff that we see on the news. What I've been trying to do as the leader of an organization that is really important to our community, the Center for Teen Empowerment, is really think about how do we move that information to a strategy to really meet the young people where they are. And so this, I just want to mention here, quite frankly, that I'm working closely with the Office of Public Safety and other CBOs to leverage Teen Empowerment's Peace Conference to do a citywide campaign on violence, right? Because we have to deal with the mentality of young people, but also figure out how this data and police can be involved in sponsoring and supporting events that help young people understand that it's not about arresting and putting them away, but really about figuring out strategies to give them resources and outlets to be better and be good civilians in their community. So I just wanted to bring that to the forefront. There isn't a lot of time here to unpack more of what I would say, but I thought it was very imperative for me when I heard the City Council Flaherty ask the question about the impact of CSOs. Council Flynn, sorry. And actually the response from the BPD that's on about how well it's working. I'm like, wait a minute, I couldn't sit here and have my young people know that I was in this space and not really remarked at the fact that we had to, as an organization, take a step back from police dialogues because young people feel like it's just been a check the box process and not really moving any agenda to keep them safer in the community. So just wanted to put that out there. Maybe that's another conversation, but that's my testimony as a leader of an organization, again, that raises the voice of young people to advocate for change in this community.
Thank you so much for your work in the community on behalf of young people. And I think it just goes to the importance of not only having you guys at the table, and the meeting you're talking about, I know very well, but empowering you when you're at that table to inform what we're doing. right? How we're responding, what the policy is going to be, how we're changing policy, practice, and culture. Not just receiving your thoughts and ideas, writing it on paper and then leaving, but actually being able to respond. So I really appreciate the work you do every single day. And on the CSOs, most of those are the folks that come to the meetings. They're the ones really interacting, but it's not the folks from the gang unit. It's not the folks from strike force, task force, or strike force unit, or other units, homicide detectives, unless those detectives, for example, live in Mattapan or Dorchester and community. You're exactly right.
And if I could recommend one last thing also that's important, you know, one of the biggest frustrations I've had is watching the lack of diversity in patrol cars, right? So sometimes you have 3 white officers who are pulling over 1 black young person or 1 car that's with black folks. And I think that there needs to be some level of diversity in thinking about how officers patrol the community so that there's some balance. There's a level of anxiety and frustration that comes in just being pulled over and seeing 3 white detectives who are approaching you. So all of these little integral pieces of policing, I think, are very significant as well as we think about the larger aspects of police reform.
Yep, and not just for those who are being pulled over. You know, I drive down the street and you see it, it's triggering in different ways, for sure. Right. Diversity is another critical piece. Thank you. Councilor Mejia, and then I'm gonna wrap up.
I know, I'm sorry. I'm like all in this conversation. It's so great to have teen empowerment in the house, as always. Such an incredible, not just thought partner, but an accountability partner. And I think to your point, Councilor Campbell, it's not just like, oh, great, thank you for sharing that, but we need to have metrics and hold ourselves accountable to what information is being shared and if we're doing our due diligence to respond to what the people are bringing to us. So I really do appreciate your comment on that. But I also just wanted to just say, in terms of just this whole conversation is, and I'm glad Councilor Campbell, you mentioned it, is the intersection of trauma and the vicarious trauma as it relates to all of this, right? So for me, you know, I'm a woman of color. I imagine to be a black man in the city of Boston, because even when I'm driving, even though I know I didn't do anything, if I see a police car behind me, I already feel like I did something wrong. Like I didn't do anything, but just the anxiety of getting pulled over, even when you're driving. And I swear to you, I think it's just a natural impact that we have. And I think that needs to be addressed in terms of the correlation of like how that impacts our mental health and wellness. If we can't even feel safe driving, even though we're not going to think that they're going to do something bad to us, but just to get pulled over for something is anxiety driven enough. And so I do appreciate you talking about that here, because I think that data, if we look at how many people feel that way, then we might need to look at how we need to increase the budget for trauma-informed practices and all that good stuff. So I just kind of want to name that here in this space as it relates to data, because it's a data point worth collecting, because I know it'll tell us a lot about how the everyday folk feel when they're driving through the city of Boston.
Thank you, Councilor Mejia. Appreciate you. I think that's it in terms of public testimony. Is that right, Shane?
That's correct. That's all set.
Perfect. Well, we're going to wrap this hearing up. I want to thank my council colleagues again for attending, all of the panelists, including folks from the administration, for being here, for listening, taking these ideas back, right, to work on. We'll definitely stay in contact with each and every one of you on these pressing issues. And to the community-based organizations, thanks for the work you guys do every day. I know many of you are under-resourced, understaffed, so we appreciate all of the work you guys do, and for reaching out to us to be and continue to be partners in the work. Everyone, please continue to take care of yourselves, and we will see you at the next hearing and conversation. The hearing is adjourned. And Shane and Carrie, thank you so much. And Ellie, thank you as well.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, David. Bye, everyone.